Hello again, and welcome to Walking in the Divine Word. This is episode 15, I believe, and this episode is about the pre-flood and post-flood giants and the onslaught of demons. The fallen angels became the Nephilim upon their fall. They were no longer referred to as fallen angels, they were referred to as the Nephilim. Nephilim means fallen. So who are the Rephaim? How tall were the Rephaim? Do they exist today? How tall are they now? Where did they come from? How long did they live? And how did they die? How did they reappear after the flood? And how tall are the giants after the flood? Many years later, Moses was told to go to the promised land, Canaan, where there were many nations and tribes, and to utterly destroy them, often every man, woman, and suckling child. Does that sound cruel? Why would Moses be told to do that? Where do demons come from? How do demons multiply? All these questions will be answered in this article. The watchers, the angels, were not fallen initially. They were sent to watch over man, but they lusted over human women. They conspired together to have sex with them. But this did not happen until the days of Jared, according to Enoch 6, verses 1 through 6. So by that time, there were plenty of women to mate with the 200 fallen angels. These angels, now fallen, are called Nephilim. This Nephilim means fallen. Being angels, they took upon themselves the size and appearance of men, just as the angels did when Abraham was visited in Genesis, in chapter 18, verses 1 through 16. And when the two other angels visited Lot in Genesis 19, verses 1 through 16. They came to Abraham as men, and they ate with Abraham, and they looked like humans. So likewise were the fallen angels. They can take on any size and shape they so desire. Enoch chapter 10, 1 through 16. The fallen angels, the Nephilim, were bound, imprisoned, and are now inactive in the affairs of men. They're reserved in chains of darkness. The offspring of the Nephilim, the children that they had with human women, the offspring of the Nephilim were called Rephaim. And initially, they were 450 feet tall. They grew to that height. That's in Enoch chapter 7, verse 3. Enoch chapter 7, verse 4 through 6 records the Rephaim consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and began to devour the men. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink their blood. Then the earth laid accusation against these lawless ones. Wow, I can sure see why the earth had to be destroyed. Now the offspring of the Nephilim, the Rephaim, lived 500 years, destroying everything they could, and eventually, just before the flood, they killed each other. They weren't killed in the flood, they were killed just before the flood. That's in Enoch chapter 10, verse 12. When women who were on the earth at the time of Jared were impregnated by the fallen angels, the offspring were the Rephaim, said to be 450 feet tall. The DNA structure, in order to breed with humans, was altered to produce offspring, altered enough to be compatible. But this infusion of angelic genes does not fully disappear with the passing of time or when the offspring is born. Subsequent births, even fathered by human males, can and did become altered to reflect the Rephaim characteristics due to a covert gene implanted in the woman's DNA. This covert gene, hiding, was passed down to the daughters of these women as well, and their daughters' daughters, and down through generations. That Rephaim gene goes covert, and it can come up any time. Many, me included, have never heard of this recessive gene that can appear at any time. It's called the Telegony effect. The Telegony effect, or you might pronounce it Telegony. I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced, but it's Telegony. And you can look that up online. You will notice that if you look things up online, it begins by using the term theory, the Telegony theory. But as you read further in the articles that are online, they use the term fact, even saying incontestable fact. So don't let the term theory throw you off. Scientifically, in order for something to be classed as fact, it must be repeatable time and time again. That would prove the science. But when the Telegony effect happens, it is random. The randomness that it happens at all is fact. It's fact that it is random. It might skip a generation. It might skip 2 or 3 generations, but the gene is still passed on, and it can appear at any time. I found that really amazing, and you're welcome to look that up. That is awesome information. Telegony is something that concerns heredity, holding that offspring can inherit the characteristics of a previous mate of the female parent. Thus, the child of a married woman might partake of the traits of a previous husband. So even though she's married and gets pregnant by a human man, a generation later, or maybe on the 5th birth or whatever, that gene can kick in and she can produce a child of the Rephaim. Experiments on several species failed to provide any evidence that offspring would inherit any character from their mother's previous mates. A similar phenomenon whereby environmental, non-genetic traits were passed was later discovered in a species of fly. The etymology of the word Telegony, or where it came from, was coined by August Weismann from the Greek word tele, meaning far, and gonos, meaning offspring. So it's a far-off offspring. The idea of Telegony goes back to Aristotle. It states that individuals can inherit traits not only from their fathers, but also from other males previously known to their mothers. That's from Aristotle. In other words, fatherhood is not indivisible. Paternity can be partitioned. The Gnostic followers of Valentinus from the period of 100 to 160 AD characteristically took the concept from the physiological world into the realm of psychology and spirituality by extending the supposed influence even to the thoughts of the previous male partner of the woman during her pregnancy. Which means that if she's mating with her current husband, but she's thinking of a former lover, that can have an effect on the child she's bearing that is from her current husband. In the Gospel of Philip, a text among those found at Nag Hammadi, are the following quotes. Whoever the woman loves, to him those who are born are like. If her husband, they are like her husband. If she's thinking of an adulterer, they are like the adulterer. Often, when a woman sleeps with her husband, but while her heart is with the adulterer with whom she is accustomed to unite, she bears the one whom she is thinking of, which would be the adulterer. The concept of Telegony was revived with the rediscovery of Aristotle in the Middle Ages. This part of the resistance to the marriage in 1361 of Edward the Black Prince, heir to the throne of England, the third of England, with Joan, a fair maid of Kent, who had previously married. Their child, it was thought, might not be completely of his royal bloodline. The understandings in the 19th century now, the most widely credited example was that of Lord Morton's mare, reported by the distinguished surgeon Sir Everard Home. Lord Morton bred a white mare with a wild quagga stallion, and when he later bred the same mare with the white stallion, the offspring strangely had black stripes in its legs, like the quagga. Surgeon General of New York, Professor August Flint, in his textbook of human psychology, described the phenomenon as follows. Textbook of Human Physiology, 4th edition, 1888, page 797. A particular, and it seems to me, an inexplicable fact is that previous pregnancies have an influence upon offspring. Now, this is in the 19th century. This is well known to breeders of animals. If pure-blooded mares have been once covered by an inferior male, in subsequent impregnations, the young are likely to partake of the character of the first male, even if they be afterwards bred with males of unimpeachable pedigree. What the mechanisms of the influence of the first conception is, it is impossible to say, but the fact is incontestable. The same influence is observed in the human subject. A woman may have, by a second husband, children who resemble the former husband. And this is particularly well marked in certain instances by the color of the hair and the eyes. A white woman who has had children by a Negro may subsequently bear children to a white man, these children presenting some unmistakable peculiarities of the Negro race. Oh, that would cause trouble in the marriage, wouldn't it? Austin Flint, professor of psychology, physiology of Cornell University, both, I can't pronounce that name, and Herbert Spencer found Telegony to be a credible theory. August Weismann, on the other hand, had expressed doubts about the theory earlier and it fell out of scientific favor in 1890. A series of experiments by James Coser Ewart in Scotland and other researchers in Germany and Brazil failed to find any evidence of the phenomenon. But like I said, it can skip generations. You don't know when it's going to pop up. But the statistician Carl Pearson pointed out that if telogony was true, later children of the same couple could increasingly resemble their father, which is not the case. A group from University of New South Wales has demonstrated occurrence of a seemingly telegonic phenomenon in a species of fly. These results were initially presented at the 2013 14th Congress of the European Society of Evolutionary Biology and the Australian Evolution Society's conference. Like father, like son, non-genetic parental effects reinvigorate the possibility of telogony. As a first step toward disentangling whether the effect is borne by the sperm itself or by the accessory gland products, which is they call ACP, in the seminal fluid, we mated females initially to a male in high or low condition and then remated the female to a new male in high or low condition 2 weeks later. These are not human tests, obviously. Interestingly, offspring size and viability were determined by the condition of the first male, with no effect of the condition of the second mate. Genetic test confirms that this result holds even when the second male is the biological father of the offspring. These findings suggest the paternal effect is mediated by the accessory gland product and provide a compelling case for reassessing the possibility of telogony as a valid phenomenon. In addition, a Chinese scientist has proposed possible molecular mechanisms that may occur for telogony. However, his work is predicated on the beliefs of the pre-Mendelian breeders to reinforce the idea that traits are passed from earlier marriages. The proposed mechanisms include the penetration of spermatozoa into the somatic tissues of the female genital tract, the incorporation of the DNA released by the spermatozoa to maternal somatic cells, the presence of fetal DNA in maternal blood, incorporation of exogenous DNA into the somatic cells, presence of fetal cells, and the fetal DNA in maternal blood and sperm, RNA-mediated non-Mendelian inheritance of epigenetic changes. As reported in 2014, experiments with the fly shown that it is possible for a male to transmit features of his type via non-genetic semen-borne factors to his mate's subsequent offspring sired by another male. Okay, this explains how that even though the fathers of the Rephaim, who are no longer interfering with what is happening on Earth because they were all killed, continue to produce giants even in our present day. You can also look up, along with looking up telogony, you can also look up recessive gene, because that's what it is. The telogony effect can skip one or more generations as well. So it is random. This also explains how they became so many giants after the flood. The wives of Noah's sons carried this gene with them, which could have easily been passed down to them from their mothers. The telogony effect, recessive genes, normally weakens as the time goes by. But with the angelic equivalent, it appears the effect lasts many generations. But the effect does not weaken. When the original Rephaim, being 450 feet tall, the recessive modified angel gene shows up in the world only as tall as 36 feet. Then later generations, 25, then 20, then 12. Skeletal remains have been found all over the world. None of them are the original 450 feet Rephaim. A great many of these pictures that you find online on social media today are fraud, but not all of them. There are giants even today, the far distant offspring of the original modified gene which produced Rephaim, are now called giantism. When we see somebody of unusual size, they're not called Rephaim, they're called giantism. Upon Rephaim death, their spirits are referred to as demons. And today, there are billions of them. In the ancient past, though, but there weren't enough people or fallen angels to produce billions of demons in our present world. But now there are billions. If people knew how demons multiply and how easy and common it is for a person to be affected by a demon or come under demonic influence, I'm not talking about possession here, I'm talking about being affected by them or being influenced by them or oppressed by them, doesn't mean they're upset or possessed by them. They would find it much easier to live, as the Bible says, a holy life if they knew how these demons were passed along and multiply. How did they multiply? No longer having physical bodies, they do not multiply through intercourse, but as asexual beings. In analogy, multiplication and spreading of demons is like that of a virus. It's not as a virus, but it is like that of a virus in the fact that it only takes contact with a person who has that spirit of a demon. It only takes contact with that person to become infected with that same spirit yourself. Not just in contact with the person that might have been contacted by a spirit or a demon, but it could be an object. And they spread that way. It's like if you get sick with the flu and you have all these flu viruses in your body and you come in contact with somebody that has a flu, guess what? They could get that same flu. It's the same thing with a demon. If you come in contact, usually through a transference of body fluids, but that includes droplets in your breath as you're talking to somebody. You're in the room, somebody that is demonically affected and they sneeze, you could be affected by that same virus. Now instead of one demonic figure, now there's two. If a person with the flu enters a room with 100 others, there could be a dozen affected with the same flu. It can be the same thing true with demonic forces. They spread through contact. That's pretty amazing. If a born-again, Holy Spirit-filled person, they have a good spiritual immune system, comes in proximity of a demon, they are safe. But if this person falls into any temptation and therefore sins, and their spiritual immune system is compromised, then the demon wins entry. Sin is the doorway that weakens your spiritual immune system. Objects in the home, occult material, images of pagan deities, products that glorify Satan's kingdom, objects used in occultic worship, provide an open door to this demonic virus, this demon that comes upon you, grows and spreads to other people. Example, an Ouija board is Satan's tool of demon possession. Each person involved in using this object can likewise be affected by demons. Therefore, one demon on the board can affect all those who play that stupid game. So if there are 6 involved, each of the 6 can have a demon or be oppressed by a demon. And with usage can likewise spread to all who play the game. One can become 100 or more. That's how today's world there are billions of demons. There are many ways that demons gain entrance to a person. This is why we are warned to not give place to the devil. The Rephaim spread through the recessive gene, and generations later they had grown rapidly in number. With each generation, the giant characteristic was weakened, resulting in reduced height, but still giants compared to others. Once again, even in the days when Moses wanted to send the Israelites into the promised land of Canaan, the report of ones who were sent into all that land of Canaan came back with the report that in their own sight we were as grasshoppers compared to the sons of Anak. That's Numbers 13:33. I do know what it feels like to feel like a grasshopper, having been to the Redwood National Park where the redwoods are near 300 feet tall and 20 feet in diameter. It makes you feel very, very, very small. And there's a whole forest of them. And once again, the Rephaim began eating everything in sight in the days of Moses, including people. And that's in Numbers 13, verse 32. These had been the reason for the flood. Such wickedness would destroy the Creator's handiwork, the earth. The Rephaim gene they snuck through after the flood, after all of them perished. Because of the Rephaim recessive gene, there were very many people in Moses' time. All the different tribes, not all the different tribes, but a lot of the different tribes in the promised land. Moses wanted to send their people into the promised land to clear it and said, "Fear not." And they should not have fear at all, seeing as how they had just been delivered from slavery in Egypt and saw the parting of the Red Sea. Even in the time of the prophet Amos, some of the Rephaim were as tall as cedars and as strong as oaks. That's Amos chapter 2, verse 9. The second time the Israelites were told to take the promised land, they had learned their lesson, and they went in. They defeated one nation after another, one tribe after another. They were told to utterly destroy them, sometimes even the women and suckling children. Total genocide. Does that seem cruel? No, not when you consider that all these nations and tribes, the ones that Israel were told to go and wipe them out, they were part Rephaim. All the people of the whole world were at stake. If these Rephaim kept spreading and multiplying, it would be back to the days of before the ark. It would be awful. So that's why God told them to go in, kill every one of them, man, woman, and child. The Creator could not let them go on, but he did tell the Israelites not to touch certain tribes. They were the ones that had no Rephaim. But even among the Rephaim, the mighty one of Israel told the Israelites to leave some of them, a few of them, alive. Why? To prove Israel, to test them from time to time, to see if they will serve and obey him or not, and to punish them if they turned aside. Nations and tribes that were connected with the Rephaim were living in Canaan. Tracing those tribes in the scriptures, you'll find in various places, when cross-referencing Hebrew words in Strong's dictionary, where they are referenced to the Rephaim, such as with Deuteronomy 2, verses 10 and 11. It says, "And the Emims," which were Rephaim, "the Emims dwelt therein in times past as a great people, and many, and tall, as the Anakims, which were also accounted as giants, as the Anakims. But the Moabites called them Emims," as well as Numbers 13, verses 32-33, where it says, "And they brought up an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, through which we have gone to search it. It is a land that eateth literally, figuratively, up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the son of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." There were 7 nations in the land of Canaan, and 3 more were added. That's in Deuteronomy 7, verses 1 and 2, and the other 3 that were added were Genesis chapter 15, verses 19 through 21. They were added to the list, making a total of 10 nations. And the nations were, now these are the nations that had Rephaim influence, Rephaim recessive genes, and they were populating. These are the nations that were told to be destroyed. The Amorites, Numbers 13, verses 29 through 33. The Anakims, Numbers 13, verses 22, 31, 33. The Ammonites, Deuteronomy 2, verse 20. The Emims, Genesis 14, verses 5 and 6. The Hittites, Numbers 13, verses 29, 33, along with the Jebusites. The Zamzumims, Deuteronomy 2, verse 10 and 11, and verses 20 and 23. And the 3 added nations, Genesis 15, 19, they were the Cadmonites, the Kenites, and the Kenizzites. Besides the 10 nations, there were 21 tribes that had this Rephaim ancestry. They were the Amalekites, Numbers 13, 29 through 33. The Ashdothites, Josiah 13, 3. And verse 12. The Aviums, Josiah 13, 3. And verse 12. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying Josiah. It should be Joshua. The Canaanites, Numbers 13, 29 to 33. The Caphotorims, Deuteronomy 2, verses 10 and 11, and 20 and 23. The Acronites, the Ascalonites, the Girgashites, the Gezrites, the Gliblites, the Jergashites, Deuteronomy 7:1, the Jitites, the Hivites, the Horites, Perizzites, the Philistines, the Jebusites, and the Zuzims. Well, that was quite a long deal there, but if you're into studying this kind of thing, you will find it interesting. And like any other study, if you don't find it interesting, it'll be quite boring, and I doubt that you finish watching this. And I don't blame you. If you're not interested in that, it's, wow, forget that. Yeah, I got you. All right. Thank you for watching, and shalom.